Hello, and welcome to the Actual Tech Media Expert Series. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event on comparing public, private, and hybrid clouds, an enterprise primer. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that come in. That Q&A panel is also the place to just say hello, which a lot of you have been doing already. We'd love to hear where you're logging in from, and it's also the place to let us know if we can help in the unlikely event that you have any technical issues. A browser refresh will fix most issues, but if that doesn't work, let us know in the Q&A, and we will provide further technical assistance. Now, at the end of this webinar, we will be awarding a $300 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for that prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can also be found in your handout section. Just scroll to the bottom, and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Now, these Expert Series events are special product neutral looks at pressing technology problems presented by an expert in the field, but the support of our sponsors make it possible for us to bring you this content. So we want to have a special shout out for our sponsors. Over the next few slides, I'm going to share some messages from our sponsors today, and I'll refer to the links that you can find in the handout section of your console at any time during the presentation. As always, the handout section also has a few valuable Actual Tech Media links. There's a link to the Gorilla Guide Book Club where you can get access to Actual Tech Media's great printed resources on technology topics. There's also a link to the ATM Events Center, which has our calendar of upcoming events, including future Expert Series like this one. So now, before we get into the main presentation, a few words from our sponsors. We are supported by TierPoint. TierPoint powers your digital breakaway. TierPoint is cloud forward and data center strong. They're a champion for untangling the hybrid complexity of modern IT so you can free up resources to innovate, exceed customer expectations, and drive revenue. Learn more about TierPoint at tierpoint.com or by emailing sales@tierpoint.com. You'll also see there at the bottom, there's a link to read the ebook on the ultimate guide to building a successful hybrid cloud strategy, and that link is also in your handout section. Today's event is also sponsored by Duo. So Duo, now part of Cisco, is the leading multi-factor authentication and secure access provider. Duo comprises a key pillar of Cisco's secure zero trust offering, the most comprehensive approach to securing access for any user from any device to any IT application or environment. You can try it for free at duo.com. This event is also brought to you by Palo Alto Networks. Palo Alto Networks is the world's cybersecurity leader. They envision a world where each day is safer than the one before. Their next-gen security solutions, expert services, and industry-leading threat intelligence empower organizations across every sector to transform with confidence. Use the QR code on your screen to register for Palo Alto's upcoming network security hands-on workshops. There you'll find a virtual ultimate test drive and several dates for events in December and January covering AWS immersion, IoT security, and an NGFW Capture the Flag event. Finally, we are sponsored by Zerto, and you can learn more about Zerto in the link on your screen. You'll see how you can protect all of your data all the time with one continuous software experience for disaster recovery, backup, and data mobility for on-premises and for cloud. So once again, take advantage of that handout section throughout the event here where you can find all the links that you've just seen. And with that, let's get to today's fantastic content. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to our presenter today, Howard M. Cohen. Howard has a ton of experience with technology vendors, channel companies as an executive, consultant, and author. He's got one of the most comprehensive perspectives on cloud of anyone I know, which makes him perfect for today's topic. Howard, welcome, my friend.
Yeah, hello, Scott. And thank you. Thank you very much for the kind words. Um, as Scott has pointed out, today's presentation is about comparing public, private, and hybrid clouds, an enterprise primer. We're going to go through the evolving process of selecting and combining clouds in productive ways. So, as a writer, um, I'm given to starting every presentation with a word of the day, if you will. Today's word of the day is integration. Integration is a word that I've lived with for 40 some odd years, and I'm sure all of you live with every day. Back in those old days, when we said integration, we meant that we took hardware from a variety of different manufacturers, software from a bunch of different publishers, and combined them, integrated them with each other, if you will, to create superior solutions. More recently, we've even added some services. So we're now combining hardware, software, and services to create these solutions. It didn't take long after we added services for us to realize that a lot more of what we were integrating could easily, even more easily, be provided from another data center other than our customers. And so the hardware, the software were both basically replaced with clouds. What we did with the hardware came from the cloud. What we did with the software came from the cloud. Literally everything we did to build a compute environment and a superior solution now came from the cloud. So our job was to combine these productively, make sure that they all played together nicely in the sandbox, that they were all secure, and that everything worked well. I'm going to take the title of today's presentation and split it in half. First, I'm going to talk about comparing public, private, and hybrid clouds and defining those. And then an enterprise primer on how to go about shopping for clouds. To source the material for the definitions of public, private, and hybrid cloud, I went right to the source, namely the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. Their website is nist.gov. I strongly recommend you visit if you haven't already. This document is their special publication 800-145. I would personally bet it's the most read of all the NIST documents, which are multitudinous. But the definition of cloud computing is one that anybody interested in cloud really needs to read. The good news is it's only 4 pages. 4 pages, and they completely define cloud computing, which I find very impressive. So let's break it out. I'm going to give you a summary of what those 4 pages tell you. First of all, there are 4 deployment models listed in this system. One is called Community Cloud. Most of you have probably never heard of it. Neither have I. I think this is one that just really didn't kind of catch on with a lot of people. Although I'm sure that there are communities of like-minded users who are building their own cloud and sharing it. No reason they can't do that. It may be organizations within a particular interest. Could be religious organizations, educational organizations, but you can build your own community cloud. The ones we've heard more about include public cloud. Public cloud is basically available to just about everybody. You can subscribe to the services of a public cloud. A good example would be Microsoft 365 or Google Workplace. You subscribe to them so that you can use the productivity tools contained within. And you don't have to really do anything in terms of running any hardware. It all runs in their data center, either Microsoft's or Google's or somebody else's. And you just use it, connecting to the internet and thereby to their cloud service. So public cloud, those of you who shop on Amazon, for example, you're using public cloud. You're not, I mean, you are subscribed to it. So you're using public cloud. Then there's private cloud, which is a little more misunderstood. Um, uh, Private cloud, first of all, is meant for use by only one organization. It's dedicated to one organization. So you would put up a private cloud to run your custom software, your own operating systems, and everything that you use to run your business. You could run on private cloud, and nobody else should be able to access it. The thing that's misunderstood about private cloud is that it doesn't have to be in anybody else's data center. It doesn't have to be outside your premises. You can build a private cloud right on your own premises. As a matter of fact, in 2012, 10 years ago, Satya Nadella, who's now CEO of Microsoft, at that time was running the server division of Microsoft, and he promoted Windows Server as the cloud OS. The reason he did so was because it turns out that Windows Server in that incarnation adhered to all the rules set forth in the NIST definition of cloud computing. We're going to go through the essential characteristics of clouds, and you'll see that it fulfilled all of those characteristics. So you can have a private cloud on your own premises. You can have a private cloud in a co-location center. You can have a private cloud in a cloud facility. You can have it anywhere, as long as it fits the description that we'll talk about later of the essential characteristics of cloud computing. Okay, so now that we have public and we have private, what's a hybrid cloud? Very simply, a hybrid cloud is a combination of more than one. Many organizations still have some of their compute on premises. They still have some in public clouds, and they now have some in private clouds. That's a hybrid cloud. That's a hybrid environment. If you get rid of the on-prem, then it's just a hybrid cloud. The key is making them work well together so that they're all secure, all performing to an optimized level, and data can move between them readily as you need it to. So hybrid basically combines clouds together to create even more superior solutions. Okay, so those are the models. Here are the models, service models. You've heard of these. These will be familiar to you. Platform as a service, PaaS. Platform as a service is really meant for developers. So the cloud system that they're using has all of the databases, all of the operating systems, all the utilities, all the tools that a developer needs to build applications. They can very easily spin up a new server, develop their application there. They can then spin up a test server and a user acceptance server, and ultimately a production server to bring their application to the users. So platform as a service is specially designed for developers. We're all pretty familiar with software as a service. I talked about Microsoft 365 before, and Google Workplace. That software, productivity software in that case, that's delivered to you as a service. You don't run anything. You don't monitor, manage anything. You don't administer anything. You simply use the software. Fantastic. So software that's delivered as a service is SaaS. The third, the one that probably most popular for major installations, is infrastructure as a service. In this case, you've basically removed all of your servers, removed all your storage, removed all of the equipment that you had on your premises. It's gone. And now you're using servers located in a cloud facility. And the great thing is when you need a server, you request it. Don't have to wait for hardware to arrive. Don't have to wait for a shipping delay. And you don't have to wait for people to install anything. You simply request a new server with this much memory, this much processing power, this much storage, this operating system, this database, and so forth. Virtual machines basically contain everything that a physical machine contains. There's just no machine for you to deal with. Okay, so you can get your infrastructure built up as a service from a cloud provider. From there, the imaginative folks in IT have taken it all over the place. We now have XaaS, everything as a service. We have services as a service. You have DRAS, disaster recovery as a service. UCaaS, unified communications as a service. Contact center as a service. Backup as a service. Literally hundreds of different service-based cloud-delivered services. But the primary three, as defined by NIST, are platform, software, and infrastructure. Okay, now that we know the different service models and the different cloud structures, finally we get to the essential characteristics. If you want to build your own private server, your own private cloud server, and you want to build it in your facility, buy a server machine, buy some storage, get a switch or a router and whatever else you need, and you can build it on that machine. Here are the things that you have to adhere to. First and foremost, it has to feature on-demand self-service. In the course of the definition, NIST talks about a layer of abstraction that should exist between the user and the underlying technology. Now think about that, right? You're a user, you're doing your job, and you don't have to think about which drive is this on, what drive letter, which subdirectory is it in. You don't have to think about any of that. You simply pick what you need off a list. That's the concept of that layer of abstraction. The on-demand self-service console takes that further. You want a server? No problem. Just simply tell us how much memory, how much storage, configure it, provision it, if you will. Tell me what you want in this server, and we'll spin it right up for you. And within seconds, literally, you've got a virtual machine working for you with the operating system of your choice, databases of your choice, as much memory and storage as you want, and can get approved. And it is yours to use until you release it. And you want to release it because you only pay for it when you use it. So when you're done with it, it's very wise to release it and just go on so that you're not paying for resources that you're not using. Okay. Broad network access simply means that it's accessible to the volume of users you need it to be accessible to. Typically, it's available across the internet. There are some private networks that use private clouds in a completely private setting, but for the most part, we're used to seeing broad network access to all of the resources available from a cloud system. Those resources exist in a resource pool. A resource pool means there's an amazing amount of storage, available memory, processors, a tremendous amount of resource, all available in one big pool, so that when anybody sits down at their self-service console, they simply request what they need, or what they want, from the pool, and it's assigned to them. And as I said, it's assigned to them until they release it. This lends the cloud what's called rapid elasticity. Elasticity is a great word for it. Imagine that you have 2 terabytes of storage, and you're then told, oh, we just bought a new company. You have to get all of their data together. Now, it's not going to fit in 2 terabytes of storage. Well, thanks to the elasticity of the cloud, you simply requested another couple of terabytes. It's assigned to your system. It's in your virtual machine. Off you go. Similarly, if you've got a big set of numbers to crunch, you may not have a sufficient processor. Upgrade your processor. Increase your available memory. Very easy, just go to your self-service console. So the elasticity of the cloud is very desirable, especially because the cloud is meant to scale with you. As your company grows, the availability of resources should grow. And what you get with cloud is readily easy scaling. It is a measured service. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is, of course, to bill you. We want to know how much you used so we can bill you for what you used, we being the cloud provider. But also, you'd like to see what everybody's using. How much of the time are certain departments consuming your cloud resources? Compare and contrast. What are the trends? So these are the essential characteristics as defined by the NIST definition of cloud computing. If you have a system that fulfills all of these, you have a private cloud. Now, we started off talking about the deployment models. We've actually created a few more in addition to the 4 that NIST gave us. One is the concept of a government cloud. Governments build their own cloud facility, set up their own cloud servers, cloud storage, and make their services available to governmental agencies. This is very closed, very private, and it's exactly what governments need. Another less formal introduction has been alternative cloud. If you speak to multiple people, you get multiple definitions. But my best take on alternative cloud is that this is kind of like a boutique cloud. They're smaller than the big hyperscalers, the Amazon, Google, Microsoft, so forth. These are much smaller, but they cater to a much more specialized community. They may offer operating systems that the bigs don't necessarily offer. They certainly offer a more intimate relationship. They become your data center. You want an intimate relationship with them. Alternative cloud offers a more intimate relationship. And if you like that, that may be the way to go. Some customers prefer dealing with a big, deep-pocketed organization like an Amazon, like a Microsoft, like a Google. Fine. But the big one, the one that everybody's heard of, is multi-cloud. What is the difference between a hybrid cloud and a multi-cloud? Well, let us start off with the early misconception. Back 15, 20 years ago when cloud first started emerging, you saw commercials on television saying, take it to the cloud. Put it in the cloud. The cloud was made to sound like some big amorphous blob out there that everybody could put everything in and get everything out of. The cloud. That was a misconception. There is no such thing as the cloud. There are clouds. There are many clouds. There are, at this point, probably hundreds of thousands of clouds, maybe even more. What you need to get your head around is that this is not so mysterious. The picture of cloud is not so cloudy after all. Each of these clouds is a data center. It's simply a data center. And this data center is connected to the internet, making it available to customers, and it runs a variety of different software. Some of these data centers provide infrastructure as a service, like AWS, Amazon Web Services, or Microsoft Azure, or Google Compute Engine, IBM SoftLayer. Others offer specialized services like online backup, online security, online management, online personal storage. So there are many, many clouds, each offering many, many services. Multi-cloud, multi-cloud simply suggests that you're not stuck with just one. That is to say, if there are reasons you want to be on Amazon Web Services, and we'll go over some of those reasons in a moment, then fine, connect to Amazon Web Services. That does not prevent you from connecting to Microsoft Azure. Very similar services, but a different menu of available services and configurations and capacities and so forth. You may even want to add Google to that picture. With multi-cloud, there is nothing stopping you from using as many different clouds as you want. Multiple public clouds, public and private. So there's even more flexibility. Well, that sounds great. But of course, with great power comes great responsibility. And the question becomes, where do we start? Where do we start with all this great cloud resource out there? Where do we start to put it together? My answer to that today is the same as my answer to clients buying computers from me 40 years ago. And that is, start with why. Start with why. Always start with why. If you haven't read this book by Simon Sinek, Start With Why, run out and grab a copy. It's a great book. And Sinek is a genius. But here, what I mean by start with why, start with what are your goals? What business objectives are you trying to achieve by moving to cloud? What kind of impact are you looking to have on your organization? How would you like to see things change based on what you bring in cloud? Why do you think a cloud solution would be better than your current on-prem solution? And by the way, while we're on it, what are you using right now? What are you using on-prem? And what about it do you not like? Where does it fall short for you that you're thinking about moving off of it? If you think about what falls short and you find it in cloud, you're on your way to answering your question. From there, you're going to develop a set of criteria upon which you're going to make your decisions. But you can't set that list of criteria until you've really assessed your own current state, your own existing environment. The other thing that you want to take into consideration, of course, is cost. If I'm going to go and replace everything with cloud, how will that reduce my costs? And the first place it's going to reduce your costs is in terms of capital expenditures. Count up how many servers you have in your data center right now, how many storage items, and so forth. They're going to run out of useful life. The amortization will complete. It'll be time to replace them. And by the way, by that time, new technology will become available, and you're going to want it. So how much are you going to invest to replace your existing equipment with new? What would that cost? Then make sure that you add everything else. In addition to just servers, you've got storage, you've got networking equipment, you've got power conditioning equipment, you've got all kinds of other peripherals that are used in your data center to support your servers. Add all that in because you're going to buy it. You're going to have to replace it. So what would replacing all of that cost? You come down with a total of that, you know what one side of the equation is. What you're going to do when you move to cloud is replace all that CapEx, all that capital expenditure, with operating expense. Here's what I mean. Right now, you are renting, leasing, or owning space to house your data center or your network closet or whatever it is you have. That's costing you. Physical plant costs. You're powering your servers. Count how many servers you have. Estimate that it costs about $1,000 a year to power each one. How much are you spending on data backup equipment and a redundant data center to fail over to if your primary data center fails? Oh, by the way, you have to keep everything cool. You're going to spend another $1,000 a year keeping each of your servers cool. So that's $2,000 a year per server that you have to add into the picture. If you own equipment, you have to maintain that equipment. You need a service contract, and that's costly. You also need people to run and administer. By the way, there is no such word as administrate. Let's get that. Let's get that dealt with right here. You need people to administer your equipment. Reducing the cost of unused resources. This is maybe the best example of how cloud helps. Let's say that you're building your new data center, and you decide that over the next few years, you're probably going to need about 40 terabytes of storage to accommodate your company as it grows. On day one, when you turn on the lights and get the data center running, you're only using about 2 terabytes. Within a few months, you get to 3. Maybe by the end of the year, to 4. You're done with your first year of useful life, and you're only using 10% of the storage that you've provisioned for your data center. The other 90% are sitting there idle. You're paying for them, either in a lease or rental or even amortization against a purchase. You are paying for that unused 36 terabytes of data, and less of it as you move toward the upper limit. With cloud, you start with 2 terabytes. And when you need to, you go to your self-service console and you provision 2 more. Not 38 more, 2 more. And you're now paying for 4. And then when you need another 1 or 2, you're paying for that. So you reduce the cost of unused resources that are sitting out there invisibly costing you money. Take all of these expenses together, brush them aside, and realize that you are now going to replace all of them with a single, fixed, predictable, budgetable, recurring operating expense. You know exactly how much that's going to be. There are going to be no surprises when something breaks down, or when a piece of software suddenly stops functioning, or you name it. That's not going to happen. There will be no surprises. There will simply be a budgetable, repeating expense that you know will happen. And that's it. No surprises are 2 of every executive's favorite words. They're 2 of my favorites. So here, we've turned CapEx into OpEx, and we're saving money every day. Okay. So we know how cloud is going to save us money. We now know what the models are, what the characteristics are. We also know that there are many of them. So how do you choose? How do you choose which clouds to use? Well, we've already said that you started by identifying your goals and objectives. You know what you want to do. So you need to look for cloud services that will do those things. And eventually you're going to be assessing which one does them best. So first and foremost, you want to go to cloud providers who have a reputation for quality, good quality service. That's a natural. You're going to be using this regularly, so you need ease of use. You want an interface that's easy for your people to understand. and easy to administer. Okay, you have users, needs to be easy for them. You have administrators, needs to be easy for them. You want a secure environment. You don't want some other data center to be a doorway through which bad actors can come through and get to you. Also, if you're subject to any government regulations, you want to be sure your cloud provider, which is a business associate of yours, a BA, that they're compliant so they can help you maintain your compliance. As with anything, you'd like to use services that are feature rich. And the fact is, as you study the hyperscalers, you're probably going to be astounded by how feature rich they really are, how robust each one of them is, and how much they differ. Clearly, as with anything else, you want a good reputation for support, an organization that people have trusted over time, which means you're going to be looking at customer reviews. You're going to be talking to customers who use each of them. Some of them will be your friends and associates. Others will be introduced to you by the providers themselves. You want to know that you're dealing with companies that have financial stability. When you look at an Amazon or a Microsoft or Google, clearly they've established some stability in their financial condition. When you look at the alternative clouds, some of them are very, very well off. Others may not be so. So you've got to be careful to assess how stable is this company. Will they be there? Or will I suddenly find out that I'm cut off from all my data when they suddenly disappear? That's something you don't want to see happen. Do they adhere to technology standards? Or are they asking me to use things I've never heard of before? Do they support the operating system that I want to use? Do they offer tiered storage? And by tiered storage, I mean tiered pricing. There is data that you're going to use once every year, maybe twice. You want that stored, but you don't want to spend too much on it. So you want a lower cost, slower storage that you can put that into and know that it's safe. On the other hand, you have data that you use every few minutes, transactional data, standards data. You want that in the most rapid response memory, rapid response storage you can possibly get. You want to be able to get your hands on it instantly. That's going to be much more expensive, but worth it because it supports your business. So you want cloud providers that offer different levels of pricing for different kinds of storage and accommodating different file sizes. Same with CPU and memory. You want flexibility in how fast a CPU you get to use in each of your virtual servers. You want flexibility in how much memory you assign. Basically, when you ask for a server, the system builds a virtual machine. It's not physically there, but it has all the memory you've asked for, all of the processing power you've asked for, and all of the storage you've asked for. And you can change that virtual machine. You can add more virtual machines, but you need choices. And each of the different cloud providers provides different choices. So you're going to have to look at what sizes are available, what speeds are available, so forth and so on. You want to know that everything, your data, the network itself, and your users' access to it, to these clouds, is secure. Secure and convenient. It's one thing to secure access, but if users have to spend a half hour to get on, you're going to have unhappy users. In addition to technology standards, you want to be sure that each of these cloud providers that you use adhere to operational standards, standard processes and procedures, not odd, kludgy, strange ways of doing things. In the earliest days of clouds, a lot of people had strange ways of doing things. Fortunately, over the past 15, 20 years, that's matured and we don't see it as much. Obviously, resilience and redundancy are there to provide you with the magic 5 nines. The availability of your system 99.999% of the time. That's the panacea. That's the goal. Not every cloud service promises it. Some do. You're going to want to keep them honest by measuring it to make sure that the quality of service they promise is the quality of service you get. Then there's the issue of manageability. Each of the cloud providers offers their own management console. And that's great. But if you're using multi-cloud, you're going to have to use multiple consoles. You won't be able to compare and contrast. You won't be able to see how things are working relative to each other. That's not what you want. You want one single unified platform. Interoperability is the word that we all live by in IT. In the age of the Internet of Things, everything has to work with everything. So you're looking for providers who make it easy for you to interface with other systems, readily available APIs, standards, and so forth. Interoperability brings with it compatibility. So you don't have to worry that one cloud you're using is not going to work with another cloud. One service on one cloud is not going to interoperate with a service on the other cloud. I mentioned scalability before. The cloud should be the home of scalability, ultimate scalability. Whether you're scaling up or scaling out, your cloud should be able to keep up with you. That's one of the advantages of cloud. Easy scalability. You don't have to add physically anything. You simply request more. For responsiveness, yes, obviously you want the computers to be responsive, but I'm thinking more of the people. Remember, cloud provider becomes your data center or your data centers. You want the people there to be very responsive to you when you have questions, concerns, or problems. So as you're talking to people, assess their responsiveness. Is this an organization you can work with? And then customer costs. You're probably going to be getting your licensing from your cloud provider. It's very often more convenient that way. Make sure that the prices are competitive. Make sure that you're using the most competitive way to obtain your licenses, as well as your other facilities. I will tell you this, the best engineers I've ever worked with know how to help you figure that out. They understand the importance of cost. Even though it's not a technical issue, they can help you assess what your costs are. And remember to track what those costs look like at scale. When you get bigger, do you see the cost curve suddenly flying upward as you get bigger? That's not what you want. You want a company that's going to be reasonable with you. And very likely, you using more of their resource is better for them. So that your cost should tail down as you get bigger, not up. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff. And I want to impress upon you, there's a lot of homework to be done here. There's a lot of research to be done here so that you fully understand what you're buying, what you're investing in. There's also a checklist for the process of getting through it. And as I said before, it starts with your goals. And from your goals, you build a plan. You identify which cloud services you're going to provision, and then you schedule them so you know exactly when each one's going to happen. This is not something you want to do on an ad hoc basis or willy-nilly. You will trip over yourself. You will get all jumbled in your own morass. So plan ahead, schedule rigidly, and make sure that you're doing everything by the clock. Make sure you know which applications are going to be supported by each cloud service that you're provisioning, and what capacities each application is going to require. How much storage do you need for each application? How much memory? How much compute power, how much processor power. Who's the user community? Who's going to be using each application? There may be some insight gained from who they are, what their expectations are, and what their past behavior has taught you. What special cloud services will be needed? There are many, and some clouds have them, other clouds don't. You're going to need to know that before you go in. And of course, which cloud will provide the best, most cost-effective services? I jumped again. That last one is very important, and we'll be returning to it because the cloud that provides the best, most cost-effective service today may not be the same cloud that provides it tomorrow. We'll get there. All right, so you're going to be basing your selection of clouds on services, the services you need to run the applications you want to run. Each cloud offers hundreds, actually now we can probably say thousands of services, all kinds of services. If you if you visit their websites, Amazon's website, Microsoft's website, Google's website, you will find an overwhelming list of services available. Each of them offers a different pricing program for those services. Often the prices are wildly varied. The thing that will trip you up is that there are frequent price changes and they run frequent specials. So if you don't want to get caught by your CFO spending too much on a service you can get cheaper elsewhere, you're going to actually have to have financial people on your team who are constantly monitoring the pricing and the special deals available from the cloud providers. Here's one that'll get you every time. Just because you see the name of the service you're looking for on a given provider's list does not mean that that provider offers the service you want. Read the description, because all of the different cloud providers may have a service that has the same name, but each of them is offering a different service under that name. They're all interpreting it differently, very differently in some cases. So don't be satisfied just with the name of the service. Dig down deep, read through the description, read through the applications, read through the capacities, come to know the services you think you want before you decide, yes, I do want them. You basically need to understand how each works comparatively to each other. There are same services across multiple clouds. They differ slightly. You want to know what those differences are and which one's more convenient for you. And again, you need to understand what the comparative costs are. If you can get the exact same service from two equally reliable providers, why not choose the lower cost provider? Just because you choose one doesn't mean that you're stuck with that cloud. In a multi-cloud environment, you can be using all of them. You can be using services from each. And remember that just like all the hardware and software you've ever used in the cloud services have idiosyncrasies, odd things they do in odd ways that you didn't necessarily expect. Come to know them, document them, warn the other operators to avoid them or to know how to handle them, but be on the lookout because you'll encounter plenty. And finally, we move into corralling your clouds. I talked before about how each cloud has its own console, its own management. Well, what I suggest you want is a unified platform. Okay, one platform to help you manage all of it, into which each of them can be interfaced. And on one console, you can see each service relative to other services so that you know how well things are running. I'm also going to say that choose platform over point products. Many engineers have tools that they've come to love over the years. And many companies now have dozens of those tools in use. What happens one day when an engineer leaves and he or she was the only one who knew how to use half the tools. You don't want to be in that posture. So get rid of the tools and prefer unified platforms. Prefer best of platform over best of breed tool. The single pane of glass is a panacea. It's not likely that you're going to be able to fit everything, but you are going to be able to fit everything into a single console. That is, moving between windows. Just make sure that those windows are arranged in a way that conveniently shows you what you need to see comparisons of. Visibility is critical. You need to be able to see everything. If you can't see it, you can't manage it. So you want to see every file, every application, every storage device, every virtual machine, everything. You want to be able to see and interrogate everything on your platform. You want to be able to monitor the use of services to make sure you don't have services sitting there idle that you're paying for that nobody's using anymore because they didn't release it when they should have. You want to be able to analyze performance to know that you're getting what you paid for. If you're paying for 5 nines, let's make sure you're getting 5 nines consistently. You want to be able to monitor and adjust capacities. If you see 40 terabytes of storage sitting idle and you're only using 2, throttle it down. You don't need to be paying for that excess storage. You don't need to be pre-configuring for 3 years from now. Increase it as you need it. And you want to monitor everybody's activity to make sure that people are using what they say they're using. And when you seek unusual activity, you're making sure that nobody's on there who shouldn't be on there, or nobody's doing anything on there that they shouldn't be doing. You'll be amazed at what you catch. Okay, so we've gone through quite a lot, and we're running out of time. So very quickly, these are the key takeaways I'd like you to leave with from this session. Depending on the complexity of your applications, selecting cloud services is a larger process than you anticipate. If you think it's going to take a month, think it's going to take 2 or 3 months or more. It takes longer than you think. There's more research to be done than you think at first blush. And it's not enough that you know that a particular cloud offers a particular service. You have to understand that service, making sure that it is what it says it is, and it is what you're interpreting it to be. Different clouds offer different configurations. Many times they package them and give you superior pricing for reserved instances, committed time of day. There's all kinds of variables available. So always be looking for those special prices and understand that each one is different. Shop them continuously because they change often. Make sure that the operating systems you want to use, the databases you want to use, are available on the cloud service you want to contract. Remember that, as I said, costs and capacities constantly changing. And you've got to keep track of what's available to you to make sure you're getting the best service at the best price. The good news is that those changes are more often than not improvements. Every cloud provider is competitive. They're trying to be the best of breed, and you benefit from it. However, to benefit from it, you're going to have to keep track of everything. And no, that's not easy. And with that, Scott, we have a couple of minutes left for questions.
We do, yeah, and you're right. It's not easy, but that was a fantastic overview.
Thank you.
And Howard, as we talked about before your presentation, those NIST cloud definitions are a great resource, and I love the way you use that as a framework for the early part of the presentation. And we had a few questions from Harvey related to those definitions, so I've added a handout for everybody, which is a link to that NIST document. It's a 7-page PDF. but the definitions only take up the last 2 pages. It's a great resource there in your handouts. You may need to refresh your browser to see it since that handout was added here live during the presentation. So we did get a bunch of other questions, although a lot of them came in before your detailed checklists and takeaways, and I think that covered some of those. But here's a broad one from Paul for you, Howard. Paul's wondering, for a company considering how they want to scale their cloud investment, which cloud computing option is best in terms of CapEx and OpEx, and why? So I assume he's looking for sort of a contrast, like, of those cloud computing models. I think I'm using the right term. What do you see is the best for somebody who's concerned about CapEx and alternatively somebody who's concerned about OpEx?
Are you saying choosing between SaaS, software as a service?
No,
Or
I don't think so. I think it's more the public-private hybrid, that continuum.
Yeah, it's really, that's like saying which car is faster to drive. There's so many variables. If you're looking to scale, the hardest part of looking to scale is trying to assess how much you think you're going to scale, so that each investment is made with that scaling in mind. What you want to avoid is ever throwing out any previous investment if you possibly can. That is less painful in cloud than it is with hardware, certainly. But that's part of the envisionment. You don't choose public or private based on how you're scaling. I would say that public is easier to scale because you're not doing the scaling. The public cloud provider is, and they've probably allowed for ultimate scaling. But in a private cloud, it's your server. So you need to decide if you're going to do it on-prem. Certainly, you're going to have to think about it when you invest in more storage. If you're doing it in a co-location or a cloud, it depends upon your business relationship with them.
Gotcha. Hey, this next question comes from James, and I think it's a good one in light of, you were talking about all the elements that you needed to keep track of when you were sort of selecting a cloud, based on the different services and the prices, that change and the special offers and things. But James is wondering, what impacts or benefits should we consider before switching to another type of cloud? So, the things that naturally jump to mind for me are like egress fees and migration costs and things like that. But what do you see as things that you really need to take into account when you're not just taking data from on premises to the cloud for the first time, but when you've had it in a cloud and you're thinking about moving to another one?
Yeah, and there are many different ways of driving to that. It may be that an application emerges that uses a specific database that's not available on your current cloud. I would not immediately recommend switching from one to another. You may simply want to access that database on the other cloud and simply run a multi-cloud environment. It's not that difficult. If, on the other hand, it's an application you're currently running that you're going to replace, you're probably going to want to switch clouds when you replace it. That's a simple one. It is possible with some cloud providers that you're going to experience service outages or service reductions, and you may get sick and tired of it. That is probably a frequent reason that people perceive that their cloud provider isn't doing the job, and they move to another. I don't think that there are any specific features of cloud other than the availability of specific services, specific utilities, specific databases, or specific operating systems. And by and large, they're all adding more and more all the time. So even that's going to fade. And it comes down to the same thing it's ever come down to. Which company do you trust the most?
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Well, unfortunately, Howard, we're up on time, and I think we're going to have to leave it there. But thank you as always for putting together a really informative presentation.
My pleasure.
As somebody mentioned here, Marco mentioned very dense slides with a lot of information and useful takeaways. Thank you. I think Marco speaks for a lot of people. This was fantastic.
Well, thank you, Marco.
Yeah, and thank you, Howard. Always appreciate you coming on to share your insights. Especially about cloud.
Thanks for having me,
Very
Scott.
appreciate it. And before we wrap up, we have one more piece of business. It's the $300 Amazon gift card drawing. And the winner of the gift card today is Freddie Lugo from Ohio. So congratulations to Freddie. We will be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank our sponsors for making this event possible. That was TierPoint, Duo, Palo Alto Networks, and Zerto. And thanks as always for attending and for your many great questions today. That concludes today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day and a great weekend.